Hey everyone, John here, and I have with me Mike, the Fresh Rinse. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, John. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So this interview is actually going to be longer than typically we'd want to post on either of our channels. So I think what we're going to end up having is we're going to have a two-parter to this
Yeah.
series, right? And so we're going to end up cutting this a little short, but make sure you check out both one and two of this two-part series because we cover a lot and you get to see a little behind the scenes of our thoughts and tricks, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, the tips and tricks. We're going to have a lot of pro tips for guys out there. These dropping little nuggets along the way. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, getting some history that maybe you haven't seen on any of his videos or any of mine, but stay tuned because this will be fun. Hey everyone, thanks for joining again today. And today I have a very special guest. He is the freshest of them all. It is Mike, the Fresh Rinse. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic, John. Thank you so much for having me on your show today. This is going to be an opportunity that I will not soon forget. I really appreciate it.
Oh man, no, the pleasure's all mine. I've been talking to you on the side and we had some really great conversations. And I've got a lot of stuff that I've got to get caught up on and post for everyone. But as we'll talk about, owning a business of your own comes with its own challenges. And I think in talking to you, I felt like this was going to be great. But for those of y'all that do not know Mike, Mike is one of the top guys in the pressure washing business. If you want to learn more about pressure washing, absolutely need to check out his YouTube channel, Fresh Rinse Media. He's also on the Wash Pros podcast, which is Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, right?
That's exactly
And
right.
it's you and Jeremy, so you're one half of the fun, right?
Yes, one half of the fun. That's exactly right. It is, in fact, the worst podcast ever. If I could just tell that real quickly, we've been doing our podcast every Wednesday night, almost without interruption for a year. In our very first, like the moment that we signed on, we went live. Our very first comment was, "This is the worst podcast ever." Like they didn't even give us a chance. And I said, "We're going to adopt that as our anthem." And there's only one way up from that point, right?
Oh man. No, it's really good because y'all interact with anyone that gets on there, and it's like a question and answer, and then it sounds like y'all have got some stuff that you've pre-planned, so that's always good too.
Yeah, it's always a good time. And then we try to give some stuff away if possible. And yeah, it's a growing podcast, and we have a lot of fun doing it every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Fresh Rinse Media channel. Also, Jeremy has it on his channel, and that is Kentucky Wash Pros. Jeremy has a wonderful channel as well.
I found out in y'all's last podcast, not mine, that he is actually still full-time at the hospital.
Yeah, he's a respiratory therapist, works his butt off, and he manages to do extremely well as what some might call a part-time washer. I call it two full-time jobs is what it is.
That is crazy. I was shocked when I found that out, but nevertheless, part of this and why I wanted to interview you is I feel like me and you have totally different mindsets,
Hmm.
and it's really good. So I guess let me start with kind of the backstory behind me, and then you get to share your part. But I actually came from the corporate world, right? I did the HR and really worked my way up the chain, and it was fun. I built all these efficiencies, got to build up some departments and things like that. And I learned a lot about business and building a business.
Sure.
Um, so I had that kind of a mindset going into it, but I've always had this entrepreneur mindset that I wanted to start my own company. And so I kept looking, kept looking. Finally, there was some stuff happening at my current job, and I was like, I really need to dive in and make a strategy and do something. And I remember going through YouTube and I'm looking at all these different service companies that I can do. And I came across pressure washing.
Hmm.
And at first it was Justin and Mike that I saw, right? Not this Mike, but Mike Padan. And I started seeing some of their stuff. And I got caught up in, oh, it's easy to make things look clean and there's instant gratification. And so I started to like it more. And plus I did it as a kid, right? Did it for like 2 years, but not this level, right?
Right. Sure, sure.
So I started watching it, and sure enough, I think you were like the third video I watched, and then I started getting hooked because you had so much more content on your YouTube channel. And so I'm watching, and I know my wife is getting pissed at this point because it's supposed to be our time, and I'm sitting here watching the fresh rinse, and she's thinking, "Oh my gosh, he's got to get copy struck and everything, right?"
John, I have wrecked many marriages, all from a distance, I might add, all from the screen, I promise you.
Yeah. So basically, I would say, after doing some research and things like that, I knew I needed to take a stab at it and try to make that shot at it. So I finally jumped in, and now I'm here.
Yeah.
Now I'm knee deep and no way out kind of thing. So
Right.
I've been baptized into pressure washing, and that's it.
I love
So
it.
so now your story is quite different though.
Yeah, John, that's very interesting. I appreciate you asking about it. I love to tell my story. We have two opposing stories. By opposing, I don't mean in opposition, but just they're oxymorons, totally different from one another. Whereas you struck out, you got the $18,000 rig. You said, I'm going neck deep. You burnt the bridges, burnt the ships, the whole 9 yards. I didn't have a dime to my name. I had no job. I had nowhere to go. I had no promise of any income whatsoever. And quite honestly, I feel like that was somewhat to my advantage because I didn't have options. It was either make this happen or just, go ahead and dig a grave and jump in it. And sure enough, I literally borrowed a friend's 2.5 GPM pressure washer, washed a few patios with it, strapped that onto the back of my wife's SUV. My friend who loaned me the pressure washer, he worked for a local cable company. And so the local cable company loaned me a ladder. They didn't know it, but they did. One of those heavy fiberglass ladders that my 5'6" frame should not ever even be thinking about carrying. Threw that on the back of the top of my wife's SUV. And I struck out to create a pressure washing business. And I say that loosely because I don't know that I was even considering a business. I was trying to make ends meet. It was the evolution of all of that with the Lord's will that created a pressure washing business. My first year, I had no insurance. I didn't even know what that was. I had no education. I didn't know what SH was. I was 2 years in. I was in my second year before I learned that SH was bleach. Chlorine.
2 years.
I had literally had no idea. And yeah, so I think I washed 180 houses on a ladder with a 2.5 GPM machine my first year. Going into my second year, I blew up that machine and had to buy another one just like it. Again, 2.7, something like that. When I blew that one up, I got on Facebook. I had finally found some of the Facebook groups. Now, keep in mind, and I know people tire of hearing this portion of the story, I thought I invented pressure washing. I had never seen a rig. I had never seen a video. I had never seen a Facebook group or a page. I'd never seen anything like this. And then one day I saw literally out this window to my right, I saw a pressure washing rig drive up my road in front of my house. And I thought, wow, what is that? I was in my second year still strapped into the back of my wife's SUV. So yeah, I began doing research at this point thinking, well, maybe there's something out there that I don't know about. And certainly there was. But that first year I had washed 180 houses, had to take a winter job because I obviously didn't make enough money to make it through the winter, and then hit the ground running April or so of the next year, determined that I was going to make a go of it. And then I found a few Facebook groups I was the guy typing in all the rookie questions. So you guys out there who are typing in the rookie questions and you're getting slammed, I want you to know it will not be by me. It'll not be by John. We get it. The struggle is real, and you don't know what you do not know. And so I was the one asking all of those rookie questions. Finally, this one guy who was a part-time firefighter, part-time washer, he got tired of reading all of my questions. I think my question was literally, this is my question. God's honest truth. This was my question. I've got $350. What's the best pressure washer I could buy? That was my question. And I was in my second year, guys. So my first year, 180 houses on a ladder, giving it this with a green tip. So yeah, you don't know what you don't know, but yeah. So he took me under his wings. He told me I needed to get a better machine, gave me a link for it. I went into debt, which I would not encourage, but I went and get this. I went into debt for a $1,650 pressure washer and surface cleaner. Altogether $2,000, and I was scared to death that I wouldn't be able to pay it off. So now things have changed over the last, now going on my 11th year, and it's just funny to watch. It's fun to watch the evolution take place when you are determined to make things work.
When did you stop using the green tip on a house wash?
Probably when my mentor, this guy who was subliminally mentoring me, said, "Don't do that anymore."
Oh man.
That's when I discovered sodium hypochlorite and realized I was doing it wrong all along.
Oh man. That's crazy to think, because I've come across a lot of people, and I would say in the Austin area or Texas in general, it seems like people don't realize what a house wash really is, or even a roof wash, right? And so there's a lot of growth to be made in this industry here. But yeah, everybody talks about doing the pressure up against the house. I'm like, no,
Right.
Don't do this.
Right.
So
as a side note, and this is something that you can use this will be a pro tip for your customers. When your customers say, well, I've got a pressure washer, something you can always tell them is, you know what, Karen, Nancy, you'll notice, Nancy, that in all the pressure washing commercials, which there aren't a lot of them, but in all the pressure washing commercials you've ever seen, Nancy, they're washing concrete, not their house, because those pressure washers are made for your patio. They're made for your front stoop. They're not made for your house. Please do not use pressure on your home. And if you choose not to hire me, whoever you hire, make certain that they're soft washing, not pressure washing. You can talk to your customer like that. Most of the time, you're going to get the job.
Wow. So you kind of hit on the struggles there in the beginning, where you're using a 2.5, 2.7 GPM machine, which for those of y'all that are new to this, that's gallons per minute, right?
Yes.
Not the other version you like to use every once in a while. But, when I started out, to me, it was, I need to be professional in all aspects. So you kind of mentioned it. Yeah, I went out, I financed a big professional rig that has the 8 GPM machine, that has the 7 GPM for the soft washing system with the manifold, the tanks, the bleach, you name it, I've got it. And then I even went one step further, because I've got a guy named Blake around here who's also a pressure washer. Great guy. He has helped me a lot, just like Mike here has. But we talked about the Flow Pro, and you've also got the Flow Pro.
Yeah, sure enough.
And that's one of those things where it was like, I can do 2 different reels, and I can go back and forth and spend more time and energy. And unlike Ohio, it gets 110 degrees here in Texas. So I need to cut down all the running as much as I can.
Oh, sure. No doubt.
So I even took it to that step and did the Flow Pro, and I've got that on my rig. But now, seeing the difference, what would you recommend people do?
Oh yeah. Well, I sell the cheap shot, so that would.
Yeah, that's a cool little rig.
Well, I was not intending on pitching the cheap shot, but there are lower budgetary items that a person can begin with. That I tell you, if a person really wanted to get invested not only in the physical product, but then the emotional value, is the more that you increase in your equipment, not only is your better wash experience going to be, but your better business experience is going to be as well. If ever I write a course, it will be how to scale without hiring employees. Here I am in my 11th year. I've only had a helper, which was my daughter, for a few months, never had a helper. And I do 5, 6 houses a day, or I should say 5 or 6, as I call them, opportunities a day. Sometimes it's a roof, sometimes it's a house wash, sometimes it's concrete. And it's all because I've scaled as I went through the school of hard knocks. But I would encourage a person to go to Sherwin-Williams, get their best pressure washer, which would be a 4 GPM, 4,000 PSI pump on it for less than $2,000. They've got a surface cleaner, 20-inch MyTM surface cleaner that you can get for about $300 or $400, maybe a little bit more than that now. But now you've got a full-fledged running operation with a buffer tank, possibly for less than $100. Get the IBC tote, and then work your way up and just put back every bit that you can back into the business. And we call those are retained income. Put that back into your business with a goal to purchase some of these things that John is talking about, i.e. the Flow Pro or something equivalent. And you're going to scale in time, which I believe personally is a safer way to do it, because if it doesn't work out, then you don't have $15,000, $18,000, $30,000 invested. That would be my advice to the newcomer.
Yeah. Now, a little about the cheap shot, though. You actually adapted this to go onto a more cheaper version from Harbor Freight. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Yeah. The cheap shots it's an amazing piece of equipment. We might leave a link in there if someone wanted to take a look at that. Again, that's not my intentions today, but Joseph Nalick of Advanced Soft Wash or Advanced Pressure Washing in Mississippi. I forget. He's got a YouTube channel as well, but look that up. Joseph Nalick is his name. He turned me on to the concept. He and I began to talk. He actually sent me some equipment to try out. I then put that to use, couldn't stop and that's just typically my personality, and my jive is I just cannot leave well enough alone. So I just made it a little bit better, I suppose. And now I love the cheap shot, especially for roof washing, pre-treating and post-treating concrete, but also for house washing. And you're getting into this for well under $2,000 shipped, by the way. And you've got a good machine that shoots 8 to 9 GPM. You wouldn't be able to wash concrete with it, but for house washing, roof washing, I tell you, the cheap shot's it's a good product. And I'm proud to say that, because John, I've always wanted to have kind of a second, maybe drip. You know, I've got pressure washing, which is very lucrative, but I wanted to have a drip, something that would keep me in the field, or should I say, keep me in the industry. And because here I am, 54 years old, I'm not going to wash forever. And so I came across the cheap shot. That's the name that I gave it. And yeah, it's been a good thing. I always wanted to have something I could be proud of, and the cheap shot is it. I really enjoy this new venture.
Yeah, one of the best things I like about it is I can't use the red gun or the big blue gun, right, with my setup. So I don't have the capabilities to fluctuate the flow with just the squeeze, right? I want that bad.
Yeah. That's one of the beauties of it is you are shooting a piece of equipment that's much like an AR-45, a Comet P40, in at least in the process. And like I said before, when you upgrade equipment, by default, you feel more like a professional with every piece of equipment that you upgrade. And with the cheap shot, you get it for less than $2,000. So yeah, it's a good price, good deal for especially the newcomer, but also the seasoned professional. Much like myself, it replaces, or at least makes, the 12 volt a legitimate backup. I will have the 12 volt as a backup, but I'm keeping the cheap shot as my main washer for roof washing, pre-treating, and post-treating concrete.
That's good. Yeah, because I'm all about efficiency, and I think I want something like this. That way I have a lot more flow and be able to do different things. Now, I think Will is a mentee of yours. He has his own channel and he actually has the 4 gallon, right?
Yes. Oh, Will. Yeah, Will is an exclusively fresh member as well, and yeah, he's doing well. And up and comer, feisty was a good word that you used. Yeah, no doubt.
I've seen some of his videos and I'm like, oh man, he's feisty. He's got the dude.
Yes he does. Sure enough.
But it's good to see him going through it. So congrats to him and his success. You mentioned the Extra Fresh group, and that was part of the next topic I wanted to talk about, which is research. You said you didn't do very much research. In fact, you thought you invented pressure washing. So that that was striking because the way your YouTube channel came off, it seemed like even from go, it was like you really kind of knew it. Maybe you cut all the bad stuff off, but I will say I did about 200 hours of video watching, which makes me feel like the biggest nerd. Uh,
You are, but that's okay.
but I mean, that's the corporate world. You research the crap out of something and you try to make sure you find every possible issue. And so I did that. So I did cheat on you, Mike. I did watch other people and so I watched as many people as I could, as many bad stories and good stories, and I still think there's stuff. I'm constantly having to reach out and ask those pressure washing groups, what have you done with this? What have you done with that? I mean, oxidation,
Oh, sure.
or we had those stains that I showed you pictures of a few weeks ago, where it was like, oh my gosh, this is not coming up.
Right,
I
right,
don't really want to acid wash this because this is a big, massive driveway.
right.
And so, I think the researching goes on more and more, but you also have these different groups. I think Austin Davis has his own group. You have Mike Vidan and them that have their stuff. You have the exclusively fresh rinse group, right?
Right.
And that is really good because, and I'm sorry to plug your stuff so much, but these are tools that I'm using and it has played out really well because I get one-on-one talks with you, probably more than what I'm paying for. But there's also the chat group. We can message all the other guys. You hook me up with another guy with another situation with radiator
Oh,
cleanings,
yes. Yes.
right? You do morning manas, which are really great. Those are very personal. Those are your thoughts. Great hairdos in the morning every time. Sometimes in your robe.
That's right.
So it's raw and you give us things to really think about, right?
Yeah. Once again, we have different avenues to getting to the end product. Whereas you did 200 plus hours of research, I had no research, and that's not to my credit. It sounds like what I'm saying is, hey, you guys do all the research you want. I just went out and started doing it. Oh, because of the lack of research, I had to go through the school of hard knocks. I wish I had done the research. I will also say, however, to my credit, there wasn't a lot of research to be had or to be done. The YouTube channels didn't exist the way that they do now. The Facebook groups and different forums that were out there, if they were out there, I didn't know about them. But yeah, I had to learn through the school of hard knocks and kind of wing it. And that was one of the mental struggles that I had. Was I just always felt like that I'm probably doing it wrong, even though I didn't know. But I'll give this as somewhat of a pro tip to those who are listening by way of encouragement. I get that we don't have a college or university that we go to. Certainly you can take courses, and I would encourage that. You can go to all the conferences and spend a lot of money doing that. And I highly encourage that as well. And then there are some free opportunities that people will throw up from time to time where you can go and you can shoot some rig equipment and whatnot. But by and large, the education that you're going to get, the very best education you're going to get, is by fixing the problems that you create. But know this, by way of encouragement: most colleges are going to charge $25,000 to $50,000 a year for a chosen field, and maybe it's worth it. Perhaps it's worth it. When you have to replace someone's plants and it costs you a few $100s, that's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket compared to those who are going to college or university to hopefully prevent the mistakes that they are inevitably going to make. So whenever I have to replace something, whenever and I've had my mishaps, I find myself encouraging myself by saying, hey, that was still a drop in the bucket, especially when I know how much money I make in this field. Man, I can afford to burn up some plants, or I've broken a few screens. I caught a house on fire once. Okay, so I've had
I was going to call it out if you didn't.
I've had a few mishaps, but when I consider my investment into this financially, yeah, don't be discouraged when you have to spend some money on things. It's nothing compared to a college education.
So for those of them that don't know, you can start a fire with water.
Well, water and SH in the electrical panel that drips down to the main fuse box or breaker box. Yeah, anything can happen.
Oh man, yeah, that's got to be scary to be doing some of this and run into issues like that. I have not had many issues, knock on wood. So I'm worried about when that actually comes. So
It will come. That's part of it. By the way, one of the things that you don't find much on YouTube, especially from those who are trying to encourage more businesses into the industry, which is fine. It's capitalism, the way that it works, and I'm a capitalist by every stretch of the imagination. That being said, a lot of times you just don't get the truth about the hardships in the business. You don't get the raw truth about the discouragement that entrepreneurialism causes into a person's life, literally to the point of needing to see a counselor. I've been there. I've had to have my talks. Believe you me, I've had to take breaks. I've felt burnout. I've been discouraged, and it's there. We don't talk about it a lot, but the truth be known, any type of industry that you're trying to take on yourself, it's not all glamorous.
yeah. Well, one last thing about your group that you started, which I'm very thankful for. I'll take your link and we'll put it in the description here. But you do a real good deep dive for that group that I'm shocked that you really share that much detail with, but it is so valuable for people new to the industry, or even some of these veterans that are still underpricing things or maybe well overpricing things, and giving them more food for thought. You've really got this business mentality that people probably wouldn't originally think right off the bat from some of your videos, but
True.
you really dive in.
Well, I appreciate that. One of the mistakes that people make entering into any industry where there's low cost to entry, i.e. pressure washing, lawn care, painting, things of that nature. You don't have to have a college education for this. And because of that, they dive in with, from a numbers standpoint, I want to make so much money. And they forget about taxes. They forget about insurance. They forget about overhead, all the expenses. So at least once a month in our exclusively fresh channel, we talk about the behind the scenes back office stuff. Here's what we know, John, and you know this because you're a member of the Exclusively Fresh Patreon channel, is that business is not an industry. Business is not an occupation or a profession. Business is a language. Business is a language, much like music is a language. And for those who know music, the language of music, you can hold a hymn book up in church and you can sing a song that you've never sung before because you know the language. You can read music. Business is a language. It's much like if my wife and I were to go to Italy. I say Italy because we just recently took some Italian missionaries out to eat, and they were fun to be around. But imagine if you and your wife went onto foreign soil, you didn't know the language, you weren't in some sort of group that you were traveling with. It's just you and your wife. You would have a miserable time for a week if you go on vacation and not know the language. You can't order food. You don't know where you're going. Nothing makes sense. You can't communicate with people. The same as in business. If you don't know the language of business, you don't know how to communicate. You don't know how to navigate your way through these things. And then your accountant finally gives you the bad news that you suck because you don't know how to speak the language. You're like, I didn't know I had to pay all this money, Well, with the Exclusively Fresh, we dive into all of this. And at least once a month, as you know, John, actually many times during the wash season, I'll take a wash. For example, I've got a wash coming up. It's a 1-day wash, probably not nearly a whole day. One residence, it's just over $3,000, and that's after their bulk discount where they combine some things together. But I'm doing the roof, the house, the concrete, the pool, the decks, the whole 9 yards. And then afterwards, we'll come back into the lab, as I call it. We'll come back into the lab, and the Exclusively Fresh members on the family tier and the besties tier will break down these numbers. And I'll show you what retained income is. I'll show you how much to put back for your taxes. I'll show you how much for me goes to charity even. And then we break it all the way down. And at the bottom of the funnel is this cash that we have now to call our own. And I promise you, it's not $3,000.
Yes, we've all learned that hard fact, right? So I guess the next big question I have for you is, in your opinion, when is the best time to launch? Now, let me preface that question with, there is that ugly statistic of the people that never actually launch. And I know I didn't want to be that statistic, but then I feel like jumped in maybe at the worst possible time to start just going knee deep, right? You're talking the slowdown of the season in the fall and election coming up.
That was tough.
And so we had all these things that just kind of bottled up. And I'm like, kind of probably should have planned that a little better. But I don't think you didn't plan yours as well. But what's your thoughts?
Yeah, that's best case scenario, John. You've got capital to play with. Capital meaning you've got money that's house money, and you can spend this on advertising and marketing. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. You can spend it on equipment, and you can spend it on all the overhead to do a business. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. Boy, wouldn't that be a wonderful world? And there are some people who are like that. And then you've got guys who can afford to do that because they also have a full-time job. If I were encouraging someone who was hoping to get into the industry, I would encourage them to keep their job if they have one. If they have a job, keep it. Wash on the weekends. Encourage the spouse that, for the next 2-3 years, it's going to be tight. This is going to be hard, but I really believe we can make this thing work. But just burning your ships sounds nice. And if you're single and you have no kids and you're living in grandma's basement, burning the ships is an okay thing to do, because you've got plenty of other avenues, but you've got other responsibilities as well. I encourage people, and I tell the truth about it. Listen, if you don't have a supporting spouse, it's going to be tough. It is really going to be tough. You need that. You don't have to have it, but what advantage you have if you do have it. I'm blessed now, John, going into my 11th year. I'm blessed now to be debt free. I'm blessed to own multiple homes. I'm blessed to be able to, I have so many things because of pressure washing, because of the Lord's blessings on my life. But I can remember, John, 9 years ago, going into my second season, I had $9 in bleach money. That's what I had. Actually, that was my third year, because it wasn't until my second year that I heard about bleach. Remember, I was washing the house with a 2.5 and a green tip. It was in that second season that I discovered sodium hypochlorite. Going into my third year, and by the way, we don't wash here in Cincinnati from, say, December to March. And I had $9 in bleach money. That's all I had. We were down to it. My wife and I were wondering, what in the world are we going to do? We weren't robbing Peter to pay Paul. We were robbing Peter and Paul. And if Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John weren't looking, we were robbing them too. But we were determined to make it work. My greatest encouragement to someone is be determined. By the way, there's a difference between drive and hunger. A lot of guys say, I'm hungry. Well, I'm hungry too. And then after I eat, I'm not hungry anymore. And that's the problem with hunger. But if you've got drive and you've got a why, my why was to feed my family. My why wasn't to be a YouTube guru. My why wasn't to do interviews. My why was to feed my family and to get us out of this ditch that I had created called debt. And by God's grace and pressure washing, I was able to do that.
Wow. Yes. I don't think I could put that any better.
But I don't know that I answered your question, because I don't remember what your question was. I get into these, I'm a pastor, right, John? So in all that I do with Fresh Rinse Media, with Mike's Pressure Washing, with Ready Wash Systems, I'm also a pastor. I pastor a church. I'm a pastor at a church. So I've got a lot going on, but the preacher in me gets in these little zones that you've kind of coaxed me into. You kind of did like this and got me in, and I get fired up, man. I start talking about this stuff, and I will ramble a little bit.
No, you're good. It's kind of like our phone calls that we have, right? We start talking about one thing, then we end up on Uber rides that were disastrous. And
so to catch people up to speed there, and I don't mean to redirect it, but those first 2 years, man, I was washing during the day. Listen, guys. I was washing during the day. I drove city bus at night, and I drove Uber Friday and Saturday, and I preached on Sunday. I would drive Uber after I drove city bus all through the night till maybe 5 a.m. in the morning, sleep all day on Saturday, get up, do it again on Saturday night, and preach on Sunday to make things work. But I was determined that it was going to work.
So in some of my other videos, I actually start talking about Uber and how you can use that as a marketing tool for yourself. So I got some videos coming up that, we've talked about that I think will help.
Nice.
Even the new guy or even the veteran guy. There's some tricks of the trade to some of it. So the question was, when should you launch your pressure washing company?
Thank you. Yeah, see, I did get sidetracked, didn't I?
Yeah.
I would encourage someone to launch when they have full support from their spouse, and they've counted the cost. They've counted the costs emotionally, financially, and otherwise. I would even encourage someone to start towards the end of a season after school has started back, just so that they can get a feel for it without diving in too deep, without committing, And then as they swing around, if you're in a colder climate state, then you're swinging around and you've already kind of got your feet wet as you go into March and April. And that gives you the off season to consider this terrible place, all these terrible decisions that you've made, and correct those decisions, those mistakes, and yeah, and maybe even save some money and put it towards equipment. But there's no wrong time to start, but I think the very best time to start is when you've got full support, when you've got capital, and you're ready to make some mistakes and recover well.
Yeah. All right, guys, we're going to push stop here. Make sure you catch us on part 2 of this series, where we're going to dive into marketing and a few other topics, and then we're going to close it out. But don't miss those. You're going to want to see those soon. So, Mike, I'm going to let you close this out for now.
All right, guys, thanks for joining us. My name's Mike. They call me the Fresh Rinse, and I'm out.